Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, Happy New Year. We are actually in 2022. Can you believe it? This year kind of went by fast, and unfortunately for me, I actually got sick with COVID. But don't worry, I'm making a fast recovery. In fact, I should be fully recovered probably by Monday or Tuesday at the latest. The only symptoms I have left is just literally just a sore throat, and honestly, I don't even feel sick anymore, so that's good. So until then, I figured, you know what, might as well just take the extra time that I do have and just bring you guys more deck profiles. So today I'm bringing you guys True Dracos. I've actually been wanting to do this deck for you for a while, even though back then I used to say I hated this deck so much, and that was mainly because of Masterpiece, because there's so many things that this deck does that are highly unfair. But now that the deck's kind of watered down, especially with Draconic Diagram at 1 and Dynamite still being at 1, yeah, the deck is still not as crazy as it used to be, but it can still do some crazy things if you can play this correctly. And there's a lot of draw power with this deck, which is pretty nice. So this deck mostly revolves around tribute summoning, much like the Monarchs, but only these guys can actually tribute continuous spells and traps as well as monsters too. So it really depends on how you want to go about it. And yeah, and one thing is like the gimmick is that their spells and traps often pop cards on the field. So if I'm not mistaken, the spells pops spells and traps, whereas the trap cards pop monsters if they leave the field. So, but of course they have to hit the graveyard to do that. But anyway, figured I'd show you guys what I got, and let's go and get started. So for the only monsters you're going to be playing for this deck, 3 copies of Ignis Heat. This card reads that to tribute summon this card, you can tribute a continuous spell or trap. Instead of a monster, once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect while you control this card, while you control this tribute summon monster, quick effect, you can take one tribute or one True Draco or True King continuous spell or trap, and either activate it or add it to your hand. So this card basically gets you access to a quick play, or not quick play, a continuous spell. Of course, it only says continuous spell, so just bear that in mind. Next, 3 copies of Majesty Maiden. So same thing, you can distribute a continuous spell or trap. And during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect, while you control this tribute summon monster, you can add 1 True Draco or True King monster from your deck to your hand. And of course, the 1 copy of Dynamite. This guy's the one that gets you access to your continuous traps. So he's basically Ignis Heat, but again, Ignis Heat gets you your spells. This guy gets you your traps. And there's a reason why this card went to 1 in the first place, because yeah, he's pretty nuts. Of course, I think this guy could potentially come back to 2 or maybe even 3 copies. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, these are the only monsters you're gonna be playing. You could main deck Mono Iwado or Inspector Border if you wanted, but I usually prefer to side those, and you'll see why. But yeah, that pretty much rounds up the monster lineup. No hand traps because you don't really want to brick with those. For spells, only 1 copy of Diagram. Honestly, I think this card could potentially come back to 3, and just hear me out. Yeah, I know it's not a hard once per turn, but the reason why is because Calamities is banned, and the reason why this card was so prevalent is because True King Dinos were able to, turbo into True King of all Calamities. So honestly, I don't really see the problem with this card anymore, because like, no one's really gonna be playing Diagram in every deck anymore. So I was like, that's why I feel like I think this card could come back. I don't know. Keep in mind that's a cautious could. So, but I think 1 is still perfectly fine. It's searchable with terraforming. So, yeah. Once you get this, then your combos basically become fairly explosive. But anyway, moving on. 3 copies of True Draco Heritage. So for those who don't know what this does, during your main phase, you can draw cards equal to the number of True Draco and or True King card type monster spells or traps sent from the field to the grave this turn. During your main phase, immediately after this resolves, you contribute summon 1 True Draco or True King monster face up, in addition to your normal summon. So yeah, basically just gets you another normal summon. And of course, like I said, all the spells, all the continuous spells, if they're sent from field to the grave, you can target 1 spell or trap your opponent controls and pop it. Next, 3 Disciples. So you can target 3 True Draco and or True King cards in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and then draw 1 card. And this does the exact same thing. You can immediately after resolves, you contribute summon an additional time. So yeah, Disciples and Heritage both are really good cards. So yeah. All right, now for our draw spells, well, aside from Disciples, you're running 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Since I'm not running an extra deck, you don't really need Prosperity. One thing I also like about this deck is that it's actually pretty budget. So yeah, Duality is really good. I'm also running 2 copies of Desires. I wanted to try 3, but after testing it out, I think 2 was the better call, so yeah. But I am running one copy of Into the Void. You know, it's just Upstart Goblin. Of course, you do have to discard your hand at the end of the turn, but since you're going to be sitting a lot of back row, it's really not an issue. Same thing with Card of Demise. And of course, one copy of Upstart Goblin, just to make the deck feel like it's actually 39 cards rather than 40. Well, technically it'd be 38 if you count Into the Void, so you're technically playing 2 copies of Upstart Goblin. But yeah, that pretty much rounds up our spells. Alright, so for traps, gonna run 3 of each of the True Draco ones. 3 Apocalypse. So basically this, and this is one of the reasons why I hated Draco so much, because this card was super annoying, and still is. So this card is sent from field to the grave. You can target a monster your opponent controls and destroy it. And also, what is this? You can target one other True Draco or True King card you control, destroy it, and if you do, the attack and defensive points of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls become half, even if this card leaves the field. So that's one of the reasons why it's so annoying. And not to mention, the power down is permanent. During your opponent's main phase, immediately after this resolves, tribute summon 1 True Draco or True King monster face up. And of course, yeah, that's pretty nuts. So this lets you tribute summon during your opponent's turn. Next, True King's Return, which is basically a monster reborn for True Dracos. And like Apocalypse, you could also tribute summon during your opponent's turn. So now, of course, the only downside is that it special summons the monster, and you usually want to tribute summon the monster. But I mean, overall, True King's Return is still not too bad, and it's pretty good that this card came back to 3. For Floodgates, 3 copies of There Can Be Only One, which arguably is the best Floodgate this format, because, you know, it puts a lot of decks in check. Against Sword Soul, you know, they're stuck to just holding one worm monster. They can't even make their tokens. Against Bird Up, once they summon that one wing beast monster, they have no chance of getting into Samorg. So yeah, this literally just puts a lot of decks in check right now. A tech choice I decided to go with, I was going to run a Monarch's Erupt. I decided to go with this card instead. Lose 1 turn. Because again, you don't typically special summon this in this deck very much. You're mostly going to be tribute summoning. This is what this card does. As long as you control no special summon monsters, well, we can only activate it if you control no special summon monsters, which honestly is actually easier than Monarch's Erupt. While a face-up monster is on the field, negate its effects during the turn it was special summoned, and it's moved to defense mode. So this also shuts down a lot of decks too, because again, Sword Soul, as soon as they summon out with their first synchro monster, it's forced into defense mode, and it can't use its effects that turn. So, and they can't negate it because this is a lingering effect. So yeah, they're basically, it just like stalls them out pretty significantly. So lose 1 turn is actually pretty strong if you can actually pull it off. So yeah, I'm also running 1 skill drain just for good measure. And I hate to say it, I am running 1 copy of IO. I mean, might as well play it while I can, while in case it finally gets banned. So why not, right? For more stun cards, 3 copies of Solemn Strike, and of course 1 Metaverse just to get access to my diagram a lot faster. So that's the only reason. But yeah. Well, that's it for the main deck. Now we're moving on to the side deck, since again I don't run an extra deck, and not that you really need to. All right, so for the side deck, 3 copies of Inspector Border, 3 Mono Iwado. This basically just to, you know, these are really good going second cards, so that way in case, you know, your opponent pumps like multiple negates, these don't activate, so you can just slap on a Mono Iwado and you're safe. It's basically Mystic Mine. 3 Cosmic Cyclone, 3 Judgment, and of course 3 copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance for any deck that are like very spell heavy, like especially with DPE in the format. It's a good way to stop it, so I figured this was a pretty good choice. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will catch you guys again next time.